By the age of 50, 80% of people experience spine-related discomfort. But what if we could change that narrative? Tonight, we're going to explore how. Hi, I'm physical therapist Katie Wolfley, and tonight I'll be joined by fellow physical therapist Joe Mescall to teach you how to keep your back healthy over the years. Admittedly, we're all at different starting points when it comes to back pain. Some people experience minor on and off pain, some people experience constant flare-ups, and others may have thrown their back out or be experiencing post-operation complications. While tonight is all about low back health, it's always important to listen to your body or speak to a physical therapist prior to beginning any program. In tonight's class, we'll provide an overview of the low back and how it's susceptible to injury, uncover the secrets of lifelong spine health, and learn practical strategies to protect and strengthen your spine at every age of life. And as we progress through tonight's program, please put any questions you may have in the chat. We'll cover them later in our live Q&A. Hey everyone, welcome to our wellness series of exercising with low back pain. I have with me Joe today, welcome.
Hey guys, I'm Joe Mescall. I'm here to talk to you a little bit more about your lumbar spine.
Awesome. Do you want to give us a little intro on common structures and things that we deal with of injury of the low back?
Absolutely. First, I want to preface that our spine is such an integral part of our body. It is really the support system that deals with every motion we do, every time we take a step, every time we reach for an object, every time we drive, sit, or anything even laying. So, leading into that, I have a beautiful model of our spine here. As you can see here, we're going to start with our pelvis on the bottom. Our pelvis here connects our hips, and from there we have our sacrum. Our sacrum then leads us to our lumbar spine, where we have 5 vertebrae ascending. That is our lumbar spine. Now, if you look at our lumbar spine, you can tell the bones up here tend to be a little bit bigger than the bones up here, okay? That's because we take a lot of weight, and therefore we need more bone and strength there. From there, we can see that we have these little discs in between our bones. Those are our discs that then take load as we walk, shift weight, whatever the case may be. Going from the back, we have these pointy parts. Those are called our spinous processes, promptly named. Those are good for muscle attachment, but other than that, they can be a little bit tender, sometimes with injury. From the side, we see these little things poking out. These are our spinal nerves. They branch from our spinal cord, which lies beneath our vertebral bodies, and they essentially innervate our legs, give us sensory motion, and give us motor function. This spine model here is very important, and it will help us demonstrate some of the effects and pathologies that we oftentimes see in our clinics.
Cool. How about some common injuries that we deal with?
Yeah. One of the most common injuries we might see or hear is a disc herniation. I know a lot of people deal with these injuries, whether you're a football player, whether you're sitting at home. It's oftentimes found in younger to middle-aged populations. Disc herniations can be caused by a few different things. A lot of times bending and lifting or even twisting injuries can cause a disc herniation. Oftentimes a disc herniation occurs when these discs, which are between the vertebral bodies, tend to push backwards. I like to think of these discs as jelly donuts, and within the center they have a little bit of a liquid almost. And when we lean forward or we twist, that jelly tends to push backwards. When it pushes backwards, it tends to hit some of these spinal nerves, which can send pain and soreness through the areas.
Joe, do you think sometimes we have people who will just have pain from these disc herniations where it's just radiating into their back, but sometimes it can go down the legs, right?
Yeah, for sure. So these spinal nerves eventually innervate through our whole leg. So whether it's the front of our leg, the back of our leg, past the knee, above the knee, or even into the foot, you might feel some odd sensations.
Gotcha.
With the disc herniation, a lot of times we find that when people are sitting or they're bending and lifting or even twisting, we like to call our BLTs, bending, lifting, twisting, and sitting, those things tend to cause a lot of pain, which flare up the symptoms. Usually when we have symptoms that go further down the leg, we call that peripheralizing. Those are usually motions we want to kind of avoid. Anything that causes the symptoms to travel up or even centralize, as we call it, to the low back, those are things we want to continue, and those are things that will tend to get us better.
Awesome. I love BLTs. That's a great idea.
Anything with food, right?
Yeah.
Now, as we treat the disc herniation, we're going to notice that standing and walking are 2 of our big things we want to do. When we're in those positions, we'll find that the back naturally extends a little bit or goes backwards. When that happens, it helps push that jelly donut, if you will, towards the front, which then relieves some of the pain and symptoms. Next thing I want to talk about is another pathology, stenosis. So stenosis is kind of a general term Oftentimes we hear degenerative discs, or if you hear arthritis, spondylosis. There's a lot of common terms that kind of get clumped into one. Essentially, a lot of times what happens is these discs tend to shrink a little bit, all right? They lose some of the water that they naturally have from maybe when we're 18 years old to when we're 60 years old. When that happens, the space between the bones, here and here, tends to shrivel or get smaller. Not to nothing, but a little bit smaller. And the space between our canals, right here where our spinal nerves are, gets smaller, okay? That is the definition of stenosis, a smaller canal, all right? When that happens, we'll find that certain positions, again, can cause pain due to irritation, inflammation, and then maybe again, even radiate down the leg. Usually we find that positions like standing for too long or walking for too long or even something like stairs can cause some of those issues. And the reason being, opposite to the disc herniation, as we go back or as we stand, we go into an extended position, just like this. And when that happens, we're gonna narrow the space where those spinal nerves are, thus causing some of that pain. People with something like stenosis are gonna find that when they sit or when they lean forward, they tend to feel a lot better than when they're standing.
Gotcha. I like to tell patients that I kind of describe it as like kinking a garden hose, right? If that space gets smaller, we kinked it on the garden hose, messages can't flow. Our legs might feel weak or you get those pain signals down the legs.
Absolutely. I use that same analogy. I think of it when someone steps on that hose, symptoms can go haywire down the leg, wherever the case may be.
Got it. Cool. What else do we have?
One of the common things that we hear, and I'm sure you can agree with me, is we hear a lot about sciatica. All right. Sciatica is, to me, I kind of hear it as a coverall term for a lot of that pain that does radiate down the leg and diffuse down the leg. Sciatica truly goes from about our L4 spine, which is our second last spinal nerve, down to our S3. So our S3 actually goes into our sacrum. So those nerves tend to clump together and form a big sciatic nerve, which essentially travels down the back of our leg. When that nerve gets affected, whether it's on too much tension or something's pinching it, that's when we hear or we have a true sciatica. Sciatica can then, again, bring weakness, or it can even bring loss of sensation or a lot of pain, intense pain, and tingling. Sciatica oftentimes is caused by a lack of stretching, immobility of the back and pelvis and spine, or even something as overdoing or overstretching.
Awesome, Joe. Thank you. So as we discussed earlier, we're saying that we're all coming to this conversation from different stages of our lives, from young spines to older spines, and sometimes with a history of low back pain and sometimes with not. But I feel like we all kind of take on different challenges throughout our lives, different demands as we age. So can we talk a little bit about maybe the young spine, what types of things we deal with as young individuals?
Yeah, for sure. So young individuals, we'll say anyone below the age 25, particularly those as infants even growing up to their full size or full height, they definitely take on different challenges than someone maybe older or in the middle ages or later stages of their life. That being said, when we're younger, that's really what's going to frame our lumbar spine. As we're aging, as we're getting older, as we're going through puberty even, those are all things that play a role into our lumbar spine developing. Just like any other joint or muscle in the body, our lumbar spine is really going to learn from what we do through our daily lives. So if we train the lumbar spine how we need it to for adulthood, we're going to be set up for success. That being said, as kids, we always want to get them up and moving, right? They always say 30 to 60 minutes a day. Those are really important because that's going to load that lumbar spine to make it nice and strong. From there, stretching, strengthening are all good things. Whether it's running in the backyard, running in gym class, doing sports, participating in a wide variety of activities, those are all going to be great for that lumbar spine.
Absolutely. And then moving up beyond that age, now we're talking about adulthood, right?
Yeah. So as we get to probably that about past 25 years of age, that's really where we're going to set our standards for our lumbar spine. What we really want to do is really start to integrate some stretching, right? So being in that age frame, it might be a little foreign to us. When we're younger, we're a little bit more malleable. We can take a little bit more load without getting injured, but as we grow up a little bit, as we go through that stage of life, not the case as much anymore. So what we really want to do is hammer home a lot of stretching. So stretching is really important. It keeps the muscles around the lumbar spine nice and loose. It's going to allow that spine to move as it needs to, and it's really going to shape how we live for the rest of our lives.
Absolutely. And then beyond those ages, we're talking about the aging individual, a little bit older. What types of things do we need to focus on for them?
Yeah, so for the aging individual, as we kind of prefaced earlier, we're going to get a lot more compression through our spine. So as gravity takes us down, we see these discs and these vertebral bodies are going to start to come down. We might even notice that we get a little bit shorter, right? We've all heard grandma say, I used to be 5'5" and now I'm 5'3", right? Those things, that's how that happens, is we lose some of those desk space and we lose some of our height, and therefore we get a little bit of that aging factor. So as we're in that age, there's a few things we definitely need to do. If you're feeling that compression through the spine, moving forward and stretching forward is going to be key. It's going to reduce some of the inflammation through the back. It's going to keep the joints moving nice and smoothly. And we have a good saying, motion is lotion. So the more we move, the better we're going to feel. That being said, especially for women in older age, due to hormonal changes, we definitely want to keep loading the spine. A lot of people tend to think that the spine can be fragile or they're nervous to move, especially when they hurt their back. But we really want to keep loading the spine with resistance training so that we can get good, strong bones. The stronger and the more you move, the more resistance training you do, the stronger those bones are going to be, the less likelihood we have of fracturing or causing other real damage to the spine.
Absolutely. So it sounds like we kind of need to find the right mix of length and strength, flexibility and strength throughout our lifetime, and maybe that's on like a gradient scale where we're kind of more flexible at the young age, we need more strength, and then continues on and up.
Absolutely. And honestly, the best answer is finding a physical therapist that can help you to achieve those goals. For some people, they might need more stretching like we talked about. For other people, they might need more resistance training, or even vice versa, or a little bit of both. Either way, those are very important. Going off that, one thing that affects all stages of life is our posture. So posture can be a really big role in our spine, through our upper spine, or especially our lumbar spine, which we're focusing on today. All right, so as a young kid, like we talked about, that kind of dictates how the spine is going to age or shape for the rest of our lives. And to middle adulthood or aging, we want to make sure we're not sitting too much or we're not standing too much, because again, that's going to cause our posture to change. The more we can move, the better our posture will be. So that means not just slouching all the time, but also not being upright all the time. Having the ability to go through both positions is very important to drive lumbar spine health.
So having a good posture with standing and with sitting, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm sure maybe you, like me, we're all guilty of sometimes having slouch posture or leaning too much or shifting weight on one side or the other. And in short amounts, that's fine, but we definitely want to make sure that we're loading the spine evenly as best we can.
Absolutely. I've even heard the phrase that posture isn't just about like how you stand or sit still, but that your ability to move in and out of postures is really important to have that strength and build, right?
Absolutely. That's why a lot of times you and me, probably both alike, we tend to do a lot of exercises based on dynamic loading or balance, right? Anything in balance is really going to help shift and manipulate our spine to how we want it to be and how we want it to train to make it as strong as possible. Whether it's carrying objects in front of us, carrying objects to the side of us, all things we do through our daily life that we really need to get maximized and keep our spine nice and strong so we can do them when we go to the grocery store or when we go up and down stairs or when we're putting the star on top of the Christmas tree, et cetera, et cetera. While all that dynamic training is very valuable, we tend to see a little bit less of that through our daily lives and with our patients here. We both can agree that in this day and age, we tend to see a lot of people that are sitting more often throughout the day than they are moving around. Due to technology, using phones, using computers, working from home even watching TV on a Sunday, Monday, whatever the day might be, a lot of people find themselves sitting for prolonged periods of time, thus affecting their posture.
I've also even heard that the importance of us sitting, our consecutive hours of sitting that we're doing throughout the day, is having a higher rate of impact on our life expectancy. Fun fact, I've heard that someone who sits 11 hours a day compared to somebody who sits for 13 consecutive hours within a day, they're going to have the 11-hour, a better life expectancy, that they're going to be able to live longer, have a healthier lifestyle, because if we're sitting too long, that's going to take wear and tear on our bodies.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's definitely something to keep in mind. That being said, when we are sitting for prolonged periods of time, even if you know you can't get up, there are definitely strategies we can do while sitting to keep our posture up, to get nice lumbar spine health. That's just keeping our shoulders back, straightening out our pelvis, just going for prolonged periods of time so we can break up our day, break up our posture into different positions.
And maybe even using aids like maybe a little lumbar pull if that helps you sit into a better posture to bring you up into a better position with our spine. Or if you do work from home or you are stuck to a computer, maybe elevating our monitors so that it brings our eyes up, that automatically brings us into a better position top to bottom. So finding those different strategies maybe to help us keep ourselves in better spine health and put us in the best path to be successful, even if we have to sit throughout those timelines.
Absolutely, that all creates better, stronger lumbar spine health.
How long has pain been holding you back from the things you love? At Buffalo Rehab Group, we understand that life doesn't pause for pain. No matter what's holding you back, we offer a wide variety of services when and where you need them, from your foot and ankle to your knees, hips, and back. Our experienced team of therapists will guide you through a personalized plan of care tailored to your needs, ensuring a transformative journey toward a pain-free life. Don't let pain limit you. Visit us at buffalorehab.com and get your life back today.
All right, so now that we've talked a little bit about the spine, the structures, what changes as we age, maybe we can talk about some practical strategies for some of these things that we were talking about dealing with.
Absolutely. Let's start with our stenosis patient. So going back to that condition, we're going to talk about the patient that maybe has a compressed spine, someone maybe in their older stages of life, mid to older, and someone that tends to like to sit more and has a lot of pain with walking and standing. So for someone like that, we're gonna start in a seated exercise.
Okay.
So we're gonna take this chair that we have right here. I'm just gonna turn it to the side so we know, you can see from the camera here. I'm gonna have Katie take a seat right in the chair. We're gonna keep it very simple with this exercise. All I want Katie to do is use her hands and travel down her legs and lean down towards the floor until she feels a stretch right through her back here. As she does that, she's gonna hold for a couple seconds, maybe 2 or 3 seconds, and then come right back up. And she's gonna repeat this 10 times. Now, if this feels good, I'm gonna have her take a little break and go for another set of 10. This exercise, like I mentioned, is meant to stretch out that low back, maybe open up a little bit of joint space, and then clear some of that inflammation, make her feel better afterwards.
Joe, if this is a little uncomfortable for someone going all the way down, can we make a little change
Absolutely, absolutely. You want to go through your comfort. If any of this provokes pain, you want to modify it a little bit. So for someone in that case, maybe they go all the way to their shoes or to the floor and it's painful, you're going to want to just follow maybe to the knee or to the mid-shin. Whatever is a comfortable spot where you still feel a stretch, but you don't feel that pain.
Beautiful. Cool.
Throughout the day, I'm going to recommend that Katie does this every time she has a meal, so 3 times a day. I like to do that. It keeps it nice and simple, gets people in a good routine.
I like it. Awesome.
Next stretch we're going to do is actually standing. So I'm going to have her upright, and she's going to come to this side of the chair. Now this stretch is called a sink stretch, and it's appropriately named because at home she would use a sink. For demonstration purposes, we're going to use a chair, but I really recommend safety-wise using a sink that's nice and dry, so that way we don't slip. So Katie's going to put her hands on the chair where the sink would be, almost like she's grasping inside that sink. From there, she's going to stand about half a foot away from the edge where the kitchen counter would be. She's going to keep her feet at shoulder width distance, and she's going to lean back, hinging at the hips, just like this, so that she's leaning forward. This is going to allow her to stretch that back again, but more importantly, as she's holding with the arms, she's going to get a little bit of what we call traction or spacing between her spine. She's going to hold this for about 4 seconds and then come back up, and she's going to repeat this process just like the last time, 10 times. If she feels good after that 10th time, she's going to take a mini break, maybe 30 seconds to a minute, and she's going to go for 1 more set. Just like the last one, she's going to do this 3 times a day. Again, follow your meals, make it nice and easy for yourself.
Any recommendations for knees?
Yeah, so if you have a lot of knee pain and you're swinging back and you tend to have more knee pain, what I recommend is actually keeping your knees nice and straight. By keeping your knees nice and straight, you might get a little bit more comfort, but while you do that, you might actually also get some hamstring stretching through the back of the leg. That is okay as long as it's comfortable. And again, if it's not comfortable, don't go as far. Katie's very flexible, unlike me, so she might be able to go a little bit further than me, and maybe you. But go to whatever's comfortable, as long as you feel that stretch and no pain, that's gonna be successful for you.
Good, feels really good.
Awesome, nicely done there. Let's move on to our next one here. We're gonna talk about the condition disc herniation. So, reminding you guys that the disc herniation is gonna present with back pain, often caused by forward bending, lifting, sitting for prolonged periods of times, or even twisting. So for a disc herniation, the first movement we're going to do is we're going to stand with our feet at about shoulder width apart with our hands on our hips. Perfect. Now we're going to use the webs of our hand to kind of feel that pelvis so we know where we're standing. From there, all we're going to do is nice and gently and slowly lean backwards, almost like we're driving our pelvis forward and our head is going backwards. Good. Now as we do that, as long as it feels good, you're going to go as far as you feel comfortable with. If you get to a point, just like the other stretches, where it's bothersome in any means, you're going to stop it there. We don't want this to go into any pain whatsoever. You're going to hold this one for 1 to 2 seconds, and you're going to repeat this 10 times. If at the 10th time it still feels good, you're just going to take a 30-second to a minute break. From there, you're going to do one more set and do this 3 times a day, just like your other exercises.
Great.
Awesome. Next movement we're going to do is a little bit more dynamic. So we might get a little bit more balance out of it. We might even get a little bit of strength out of it, but it's something very doable at home. What we're going to do is we're going to stand in a very similar position to start with, and we're going to choose a leg, whichever one you like first, right or left. Right for Katie. What she's going to do is she's going to take a step backwards, about half a step or a full step, and then she's going to throw her arms up into the air. By doing so, you're going to see that the front part of her body is going to stretch out, maybe through the hip flexor, maybe even into the back, maybe even through the torso. As she goes into this position, she's going to hold for about a second, then she's going to come back to that neutral position, and then she's going to alternate legs. I like to keep it even, but I like to alternate at the same time, so we're not overdoing one side versus the other. She's going to do this for 10 times on each side, so a 20 count total. Again, she's going to reassess if it felt good afterwards. She's going to take a quick break, 30 seconds to a minute, and then she's going to do another set. But this looks perfect.
Feels pretty good.
Awesome. Last one we're going to deal with is sciatica. Okay, so reminding you guys, sciatica is often caused by that understretching or some neural tension of that nerve that comes from the low back and goes down the leg. This movement, we're actually going to take a seat right in the chair here. Now in the chair, what I want you to do is we're going to use just the right leg to start with. I'm going to have her point her toes up towards the ceiling. From there, she's going to kick up until she feels a stretch, but she's also going to look up as she goes. Just like that. From there, she doesn't have to hold for very long. She's going to come right back down, and she's just going to repeat this process. Again, same as the other exercises. If you go so far that it starts to hurt, take a little bit off. This should be nice and easy. And we're going to go for 10 on that side, 10 on the other side, and then we're going to see how she feels. She feels pretty good. We're going to repeat this process after about a minute or so and do another set of 10.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What about other practical strategies for many of us who have to sit throughout the workday? Things that we can do to our ergonomics or make our workplace a little more efficient for us?
Yeah.
Posture?
Yeah, well, we talked about that posture like you just mentioned. There's a few different strategies that we can think of in order to keep an ideal posture for success for that lumbar spine. So first thing we want to do is when we're sitting in our chair, we want to make sure our hips are just above our knees. So if our knees are above our hips, that might be an awkward position. It's going to put our lumbar spine in a vulnerable position. Yeah, we don't want to quite do that. We want to have our knees just below the hips. From there, what we want to do is have our feet on the floor. As fun as it is to dangle the feet, it's more comfortable and easier on the spine to have them firmly on the floor. From there, you're going to want to raise your surface, whether you're working at the computer, working on your phone, but raising it up to about eye level. That way we can maintain a neutral position of our back from the neck all the way down to the lumbar spine. Last but not least, keep the shoulders back. If we slouch too far forward, you might notice that you're going to get tight in the chest, which then can compensate and lead to pain in the low back. So keep the shoulders back as best you can, but as always, it's okay to change positions every once in a while, as long as you're relatively in that position for most of the day.
Perfect. So these are great strategies everybody can take into their daily lives, even starting tomorrow. Thank you.
No problem.
So those were all really great exercises, especially per all those different conditions we might be dealing with. Maybe we can talk about some practical tips on how we make those a part of our daily lives.
Absolutely. A lot of these things that we're doing and introducing definitely can be difficult to immediately integrate into our lifestyle, right? Everyone's so used to the way they do things every day, in the morning, how you wake up, your morning routine, your lunch routine, your dinner routine, and so on and so forth. So finding a good way that works for you is something that physical therapists can always help you with, but these are just a few tips that we can give you. For one is use these exercises, like I said, on a regular routine. Find a time of day that works best for you and roll with that every day. I would only start with a few changes at first, maybe 1 or 2 things that you can do, whether it's your posture or whether it's some of the movements we talked about, and from there start to add more and more every day. As you bring yourself to a routine, as you're regularly doing these things, you're going to start to see some good changes, and that's only going to motivate you further. Yeah. A lot of things I've heard are things like when you're using the microwave or cooking something, take those breaks that you have where you're just standing there and maybe do some of these movements. Use that sink that we talked about earlier to your advantage, or do some standing extensions depending on what's appropriate for you. Another good one is every commercial break. If you know you're watching a good program, good show, every streaming service has ads now, you're going to find them. You need to do some movements, sit yourself upright, stand up, walk around, whatever the case may be, but those are going to help integrate healthy lumbar spine health.
I found that also maybe even just telling my patients like what our posture should feel like and to start to notice what your typical posture is, like being more aware of it sometimes points things out, makes you a little bit more aware of how you're moving so that you can make those little changes too.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you notice that you're doing some of these movements and you don't feel a difference, well, there might be a chance that maybe you're not doing it right, or maybe you need some helpful advice, or even someone just to look after you and watch you do these movements so you know you're doing the right thing. And as you do that, you're starting to feel that change, and that'll help drive that motion better.
Absolutely. Beautiful.
From there are a few things that I also want to talk about that will help drive really good health for the lumbar spine. So 3 things that I always tell my patients that are super important to any injury, but particularly the lumbar spine in this case. Getting enough sleep, which I recommend somewhere between 6 and 8 hours, depending on the person. Having a healthy diet, vitamins, minerals, everything you need with proper hydration. And then getting movement, right? Moving through these exercises, going back to that motion is lotion, as we say, but having that movement will help drive a lot of the healing and get you feeling pretty good in that lumbar spine.
Absolutely. I've heard eat the rainbow, right?
I like that. I like that a lot. From there, I really recommend trying to integrate some of these posture changes we talked about recently. So if you can integrate that posture change, whether it's at work, whether it's walking and standing, even at the grocery store. I know a lot of times I see people hunched over a grocery cart or leaning towards one way instead of actually turning their bodies or shifting the right way. Integrating those posture changes through every movement you do will have a lot of success for that lumbar spine.
Absolutely. Building blocks, things will change a little bit by bit as you go, right?
Yep. You can't expect everything to change after one day or even 1 week, but you should start to see small changes and incremental week by week, month by month until you're feeling really good.
Awesome. Great tips. So from everything we've learned today, it kind of seems like we've learned that our low back is kind of the cornerstone to a lot of things in our body, to even some of our major joints and our overall health. So it seems pretty important that we should probably get on top of good health in our spine, whether we're having issues or not, right?
Absolutely. Lumbar spine health is a lifelong process. It's something that we can do before an injury. It's something we can do after an injury. It's something we can do through our whole life. It's never too late to start something like this. It's never too early to start some movements, some healthy habits of the lumbar spine, just so we can stay as healthy as we can be, stay as mobile as we can be, and do everything that we want to do. At the end of the day, it's really, we want to do whatever comes up in life. We want to be able to achieve our goals. We want to be able to garden. We want to be able to play sports. Whatever the case may be, whatever it might be for you, it's very important that we have healthy lumbar spine health so that we can do those things. For example, a few things that a healthy lumbar spine can do is it improves quality of life. It can improve our sleeping habits. It can improve our exercise. It can help us in sports, whether you're young or old, achieving what we want, whether it's a golf swing or a hockey stick or even a jump shot, whatever the case might be. And it's just really good for even our hip, knee, ankle, and foot health. Sometimes those pains that we have down there actually come from the lumbar spine. So it's important to get that checked out. It's important to be healthy in that lumbar spine.
Very true. So if you're someone who's looking to start your wellness journey and try and get into maybe those great strategies for improving your low back and continuing on with that healthy lifestyle, we have something great for you to use. We have Indie, our digital wellness app, which you can use to go through programming that we've had PTs design to go through different areas of the body, but especially what we're kind of focusing on tonight, it's called Focus Low Back. We've designed programs with flexibility, strength to help you find that right area of strength and mobility that's fine for good health. So, and actually anybody who's in the audience gets a free 30-day trial to use our Indie app to go through that Focus Low Back program. If you look through your emails over the next, or following tonight, you'll have an email that'll have that free trial for you to use and get started. So we're very excited to have you be able to start that journey and find what works for you. So thank you, Joe, for doing this with us tonight. We're actually going to go into some live Q&A questions now that you guys are going to be sending to us. So let's see what you got.
Do you feel like you're slowing down? Feeling older? like you're out of routine and tired of being tired. Ready to get moving and take control of your health? Introducing Indie. We help everyday people move, exercise, and live an independent life. Indie provides safe, low-impact workouts designed by a team of physical therapists.
We're going to work on balance, strength, and mobility. Get control of our pelvis. We want to get control of that core.
Unlike other programs, you won't be left feeling exhausted, injured, or struggling to keep up. Get moving and improve your life today. Try for free. Visit indiemoves.com and get moving.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We are just in time for our Q&A. I just want to give you a reminder, thank you so much for participating with us. For everybody who's been on today, you will receive an email after tonight's class giving you instructions and details regarding a free trial that you get of our Indie app, which is PT-guided exercises written by PTs, performed by PTs, where you guys can work out with us and continue to improve your health. So there'll be more instructions coming tonight after the class and an email with a code that you can use for that. But all right, we're gonna get right into the questions. Ready, Joe? Okay. Our first question is here from Karen. She says, I've been researching orthopedic seat cushions. Do these actually help with sciatic pain? I've had pain in my buttocks that radiates down the back of my leg when driving and sitting on hard chairs.
Yeah, that's a great question here. So the seat cushions can be very helpful in certain circumstances for a lot of people that tend to drive a lot, or you have a long road trip coming. That being said, I do think it's important that you see someone about the pain so you can get to the root of the cause, because if there's something we can help you with, that might be a better alternative to helping get rid of the pain once and for all, as opposed to having to deal with it in the seat cushion every time you drive. Great question.
All right, question number 2 comes from Candace. Candace says, is it good to wear a lidocaine patch on your back to relieve pain? Sometimes if I've had to do a lot of walking, I will wear one, but I'm wondering if it's a miracle cure or if I'm hurting myself. What do you say?
It's a very similar question, honestly. A lidocaine patch, I wouldn't say is a miracle cure. It can certainly be helpful for those scenarios where, opposite to the car with Karen's question, where we're walking for a long time, we know we have to do a lot of activity. Maybe for me, it's something like grocery shopping, where we know we have to lift up heavy objects from the ground, bend, twist, lift. That being said, it is not a cure. You do need to find the root of the cause that's causing your pain. That will help you resolve the problem, get rid of the back pain once and for all, and then you won't need the lidocaine patch.
If I can add to that, I was thinking that having that lidocaine patch is helpful for reducing pain as you're doing activities. Be mindful not to overdo the activity beyond what you know you'd usually be comfortable with. It'll help you get through what you need to, but don't let it allow you to push beyond your normal boundaries. All right, next question. KP says, could you show us the sciatic nerve? Many talk about it causing pain, and are there exercises or stretches we can do to prevent it from pinching on the sciatic nerve?
Absolutely, the infamous sciatic nerve. So we don't have an exact model with the sciatic nerve on our skeleton here, but if we look at our low back, our lower level lumbar spine into our sacrum, we have these passages where our nerves would pass. From there, it's going to feed through the back of the leg, right through the glutes, and then travel down. Now that sciatic nerve can be very irritable, especially with sitting, prolonged sitting, situations like that. So there's a lot of stretches we can do. Mobilization techniques we can do, but I would definitely recommend seeing a physical therapist for specified for your treatment, for your needs for that sciatic pain, because everyone can kind of differ on how they exactly present.
All right, this one is from Yolanda. Yolanda said she was just diagnosed with a lumbar spinal stenosis. What can I do? Also, what is the difference between a bulging disc and stenosis? And in both situations, the disc is dealing with being squashed, right? So kind of explaining the difference between the disc and the lumbar stenosis.
Yeah. So for a lumbar stenosis, we're going to really notice that between our lumbar vertebrae, we're going to get some narrowing between the height. So for you, you might notice maybe you've gotten a little shorter over the years. That's going to be a really good telltale sign of stenosis happening with degenerative discs. With that, you want to do a lot of stretches moving forward, so things like the seated bends we talked about, a sink stretch where you lean back, and more seated positions, slowly working on getting more comfortable into other positions. For a disc that's bulging, you're going to kind of want to go in the opposite direction. You're going to want to start extension-based or upright-based, so actually leaning back, trying to almost push the disc back forwards to get more comfortable, get more relief out of your back pain.
All right, Mike is asking, can a herniated disc in the low back cause tingling in the toes?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. That disc in the low back can absolutely send signals down the leg, pretty much anywhere throughout the leg. So I like to think of it, and we talked about this earlier, like a hose running out of the back here. If you step on it, you're going to get different varying symptoms. It just depends on where you're getting affected through that nerve, what level of the spine, maybe throughout the leg, where that nerve is getting pushed. So definitely can happen. It's not the only way that can happen, but it's definitely a possibility. And again, that's where you're going to need a specialist to really tell you where and what is causing that numbness in the toes.
Perfect. All right. Next, we have a question from Rachel. She says, how do we know what resistance bands are best to use with our exercises?
Yeah. Another great question. So resistance bands are a great tool to use to get good strength, whether you're doing it for your arms, legs, or the low back, or even the upper back. Resistance bands really do vary by size, thickness, resistance. For me, my go-to is I want to find a resistance band that has a lot of work, where the people get fatigued by maybe the 8th, 9th, 10th rep of every set, but I don't want pain to be provoked as I use a resistance band for low back. Okay, so if you're using the resistance band in any which pattern, you want to make sure that you're very comfortable with it, fatigued by the end, but not into pain.
Perfect. All right. Candace would like to know what exercises are good for scoliosis. Would that include walking or strength training as well?
Yeah, scoliosis is a great one. Scoliosis can present many different ways, so that one really does depend on how you present, what age it started, the type of scoliosis. But things like walking and moving and resistance training and strength training are really, really great options. You want to make sure you do it the right way, though. And again, not to be a broken record, but you really want to find a specialist that will treat you for that scoliosis specific. But those options are really, really great. I do a lot of diaphragmatic breathing for scoliosis when I first start, so that's another exercise we can use, you can look up. It's a very simple one, but it's really good to calm things down, and then from there you can work through that scoliosis and that back pain.
All right. Tom has some questions. He says he has chronic stenosis and he's had a history of a laminectomy, which means we are taking out one of the bony portions on the back of the spine, for those who don't know, to help usually alleviate pain from the spinal cord and the nerves. His leg pain is greatly improved, and after multiple PT exercise experiences, he just can't gain the strength in his legs. Is it possible that the nerve damage is permanent, and can it improve?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and you had a lot done, so I sympathize with you, and I'm sure you're going through a lot, but absolutely, you can get that strength back. Nerves tend to take a long time to heal. If you ask anyone, Katie, even a surgeon, a doctor, nerves are very variable. I like to think of them as very finicky too, so they may take a very long time to heal, and then that strength can take a long time to come back as well. I would really recommend sticking with the course. You're doing all the right things. Stick with what you got. Keep going for that strength, and the nerves will come eventually. It just unfortunately is one of those things that we can't really totally factor in, but PT is the best way that you can get that strength back.
Awesome. All right. MB says, I have a herniated disc through L4-S1, and I've torn some tendons and ligaments in my hip. What are some stretches to do if you've been very immobile to help with the back and the spine?
For the lumbar disc herniations, like I said, we want to go backwards, okay? But dealing with the hip is a separate entity. We really want to make sure that we're cautious of the hip. It depends on the tendons, and it depends on what areas we're talking about and which side of the hip we're talking about. So I can't give too specific of exercises, but generally speaking, for the disc herniations, we want to work backwards, and you want to stay in a comfortable range. So if you're pushing backwards and you're really feeling pain through the hip, well, then we're doing a bit too much, and you really need to find someone that can cater to those needs through the hip and the back as separate cases.
Awesome. All right. Deborah says, would wearing a back support belt help with the lumbar spine pain? And also, can injections help the low back pain?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lumbar spine belt is very helpful in certain scenarios, but the big thing I always think about is when we rely on that lumbar spine belt, it can replace some of the muscle we have, and we need that muscle so that we can be long-term successful. We don't want anyone ever wearing a belt all the time, 24/7. I don't think you want to be wearing a belt 24/7. So we kind of have to use that belt to slowly get more out of you and get more comfortable with exercises and movements and strengthening exercises. But as we work with you, we're going to slowly progress you off the belt to get you more comfortable without it and hopefully leave it out for good. What was the second half of that question?
Do injections help with pain?
Yeah, so injections are a really good tool to help reduce some of the inflammation of the back. Could be for any joint, but we'll talk about the back specifically. So they can get us almost over a hump, I like to think of it, and they can be very helpful. But again, if there's something causing the back pain, it doesn't necessarily alleviate that. So I've seen people be very successful for a few months. I've seen people be successful with a day of injections. But we really need to find what's the root of the pain, what's causing some of the inflammation, what's causing that, and then we can get to the root of that and really fix that permanently.
Yes, okay. Derek says he's had multiple surgeries, including spinal fusions and a laminectomy, in addition to having diagnoses of stenosis and a degenerative disc disease. And he's wondering what stretches would we recommend to do in the morning and maybe at night for those.
Great question. Now, this one is going to depend on when you had those surgeries. So this I can only speak to if you're well after the surgeries. And this, again, you'd really need to see a specialist to figure out what are your precautions, what can and can't you do. But assuming that you're pretty far after those surgeries, some simple stretches to really focus on the hamstrings are very good. So something where you keep your back in a neutral position and you lean forward, even pointing the toes up as you lean forward, either from a chair or from standing, is a really good way to get the legs involved. And then from there, you can slowly work on building strength and stability around the core and the glutes to help stabilize as that spine heals from all those surgeries. And then from there, it depends on your case and what you need for your stretches.
Yeah, I would think to kind of add that, like with a lot of those surgeries, that's a lot to your spine. Where then taking that thought to, okay, how well do my hips move? Are they strong? And even the sections of your spine above. So working through your thoracic spine or what the rib cage is attached to, trying to find exercises that might help you mobilize through there. Because with those fusions, you're not going to have mobility there anymore. That's why they've been put together to reduce that movement. So respecting that they won't have more movement, making sure that you're getting it from elsewhere as well. All right. Geraldine asks, does having osteoporosis affect how the stretches should be performed?
So with osteoporosis, we're going to get almost like a weakening of the bones and vertebrae. So it doesn't necessarily change what stretches we do, but I think it tends to change how much or how many or how you tolerate the stretches. So if you know you have a severe case of osteoporosis, you may want to be very gentle and ginger with your stretching. And slowly work your way from maybe sitting or laying stretches to more upright so we get gravity come with us and really get good bone density as we're healing, as we're going through all of our exercises, whether it's stretching or strengthening exercises. I like to think they go hand in hand.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Okay. And Sue asks, what would you do for a slip disc and when you have an anterior pelvic tilt?
Two separate things. So if we determine that they're both causing pain, right, then we can do different things for each one. So for an anterior pelvic tilt, we work on some posterior pelvic tilts, really focusing on mobilizing through the hips and maybe some stretches through the core and through the hamstrings as well. For the slip disc, it depends on how bad and where it is. But again, we're going to kind of take more extension, more of an upright approach. So we can kind of integrate both at the same time, but we may want to take them as separate cases in themselves. And then hopefully as we progress, as we train, then we can kind of use both of them to our advantage and work on strengthening and stability as we mobilize both of them.
Janet would like to know, will heating pads work for back pain?
Yeah, I love a heating pad for back pain. I won't lie at all, especially in the morning when it's a cold day. But what the heating pad is really good for is it loosens up a lot of the muscles around the area, and it brings blood flow to the area. So I like to think in the morning, if I'm having my coffee, eating some cereal, before exercise, before any treatment, I like to start with some heat. As we go through the exercise, if you tend to notice you get real sore, then maybe you'd want to go to ice after. But if you like heat, if the heat feels good, I roll with the heat. I really, the difference between heat and ice is really a personal preference, and I tend to see that heat really does help with the back pain.
I would say at most, I think I found that some people will prefer ice when it's maybe some of that radiating pain or it's a burning sensation where it's definitely coming from the nerve. The ice just kind of numbs things out. But as long as it's not an acute injury, usually you can kind of pick and choose which one you prefer and go on a preference basis. Unless, yes, I'm getting ready for a workout. I'm going to heat up so I get everything nice and warm before I get stretched. All right, our final question here. How many times a day or a week are safe to start doing these exercises, making sure that we're not hurting ourselves?
Yeah, so with the exercises, for anything stretching, I tend to think we can go through a couple a day if they're feeling good and if they fall under your case. If you notice that pain is provoked with any of them, then that's the time that you really want to see a specialist and really make sure you're seeing maybe a PT or maybe your doctor and getting the right thing that really falls under your back pain. For anything strengthening, if you progress to that, that's something that we'd go to every other day or every few days. But for the basic stretching exercises that we mostly went through today, those are things we can do once or twice a day, gently, easily, and gracefully.
All righty. All right, that finishes our Q&A. Thank you guys for participating with us. We're so glad you can come out. I hope you've learned a couple of new things you can put in your back pocket, and we've helped you with some pain. So stay tuned after today for that email that's going to come to you with information regarding the free use of our app, Indie, for exercising. It does have a section for low back, so if you're someone who's pretty healthy, but you're just looking to do some more things, that would be a great way to just get you into a little bit of exercise and strengthen up through that spine. All right, guys, thank you for being with us. We'll see you next time.